A physical therapist found herself in the rain with her daughter that Wednesday night, holding everything she had left in her arms, which wasn't much. What the man who stopped for her didn't know what he couldn't have known was that saving them would be the thing that finally saved him. This is the story of how one decision on the worst night of two people's lives became the beginning of everything. Before we go any further, tell us where in the world you're listening from. We love knowing how far these stories travel. The rain came in sideways that night. Not the soft Tennessee drizzle that people around here are used to. This was a full assault, the kind that bends the trees and turns the streets into rivers. Marcus Webb had his wipers cranked all the way up, and they still couldn't keep pace with it. 11:45 on a Wednesday night. He'd been on a commercial roof since 6 that morning, and his back was making sure he didn't forget it. Bone tired didn't come close. That's when his headlights found them. 2 figures under the plastic overhang of a bus shelter on Magnolia Avenue. A woman, and in her arms a child, both of them soaked straight through, even standing out of the rain. Something in the way she was holding that little girl tight like a shield, like the only thing she was certain of in the world, made Marcus's foot hit the brake before his brain had any say in it. He'd learned a long time ago not to argue with that feeling. He pulled to the curb and stepped out into the storm. His jacket was soaked through in seconds. As he got closer, the woman looked up, mid-30s, dark hair stuck flat against her face, scrubs visible beneath a thin jacket that had given up being waterproof about an hour ago. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. That particular shade of desperate that doesn't come from one bad day. That comes from the end of a very long road. "Hey," Marcus called over the rain. "You doing okay?" She looked at him the way people look at strangers when they're trying to decide if being cautious is still a luxury they can afford. In her arms, the little girl, maybe 4 or 5, stirred and whimpered, her face tucked against the woman's neck. "We're fine," she said. The crack in her voice gave her away immediately. "Thank you, though. You're in PT. Scrubs in a Tennessee downpour at midnight," Marcus said, not unkindly. "I've got a 9-year-old at home with my neighbor. I'm heading back right now. Can I drive you somewhere warm? There's an urgent care 2 miles up, or if you need." The woman's face changed, just fell apart quietly, the way faces do when someone accidentally says something kind at exactly the wrong moment. "I don't." She stopped, swallowed hard, started again. "I don't have anywhere to go." 6 words. They hung there between them and the rain like a confession neither of them had been prepared for. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, something old, something he recognized. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's get you both out of this." 20 minutes later, he was unlocking the front door of his rental house in the Riverside district, a modest 2-bedroom with a porch he'd meant to fix for 2 years and a yard that was mostly good intentions. Miss Dot from next door had been watching Owen, and she took one look at the woman and child behind Marcus and asked exactly 0 questions. She just gathered her cardigan, squeezed Nora's hand on her way out, and said, "There's leftover chili in the pot if anyone needs it." Marcus found towels, found a dry flannel shirt and a pair of sweatpants that were 3 sizes too big. He handed them over without ceremony and pointed her down the hall. "Bathroom's yours. Take whatever time you need. I'll put something warm on the stove." The woman stood in his entryway, still holding her daughter, looking around the house with the dazed expression of someone who had given up expecting anything good to happen and hadn't quite recalibrated yet. "I'm Nora," she said finally. "Nora Callahan. And this is Lily, Marcus Webb." He reached out and gently tucked the towel around Lily's shoulders. "Nice to meet you both. Wish it were different circumstances." While Nora got changed, Marcus checked on Owen, found him asleep on top of his covers with a library book still open on his chest, a flashlight in his hand. The kid never did trust that his reading lamp wouldn't burn out in the night. Marcus clicked the flashlight off and stood there for a moment, just watching him breathe. Then he went back to the kitchen and turned the stove on. When Nora came out 15 minutes later, Lily was wrapped in the flannel shirt like a small ghost asleep against her mother's shoulder. Nora herself looked marginally more human, but her eyes still held that hollowed-out quality that no dry clothes could fix. "Sit," Marcus said, nodding toward the kitchen table. "You don't owe me any explanation. But if you want to talk, I'm not going anywhere." She sat. She stared at the bowl of chili for a long moment, and then slowly, carefully, like someone taking apart something that had been holding them together, she told him. "I was a physical therapist at Summit Rehab on the West Side," she said. "For 6 years. I loved that job. I was good at it." Marcus said nothing, just listened. 7 weeks ago, the practice got bought out by a national healthcare group. New management came in. New billing protocols. She paused, pressing her lips together. They wanted us to document sessions that didn't happen. Extended treatment plans for patients who were already recovered. Medicare fraud, basically. I complained to HR. I put it in writing. A short, hollow laugh. That was apparently my mistake. They fired you. Technically, it was restructuring. She made a small, tired gesture with her hand. But yes. And then they made calls. I don't know exactly what was said, but I applied to 11 clinics in the Knoxville area over the past 7 weeks, and not one of them called me back. Not one. Her voice went flat and steady, the way voices go when a person has cried about something so many times that the tears have simply run out. Lily has asthma. Her inhaler isn't cheap. I used my savings. Then I used my credit. Then I called my landlord and asked for time, and he gave me 2 weeks. And I used that time trying to find work, and when those 2 weeks were up, she stopped. Looked down at Lily's sleeping face. He changed the locks this morning. I had 2 hours to get whatever I could carry. Where's your stuff now? Marcus asked carefully. Gone. Whatever didn't fit in my backpack. She shifted Lily slightly. I called 4 shelters. All of them were full. I didn't know where else to go. I sat down under that shelter and I just stopped. Marcus's jaw was tight. He'd heard a lot of hard luck stories over the years, some earned, some not. This one felt like neither. This felt like someone getting punished for being the only person in the room willing to do the right thing. You'll stay here, he said. Nora looked up sharply. I'm sorry, I've got a spare room. It's basically just a futon and a bookshelf, but it locks from the inside and it's warm and dry. He held her gaze. Until you get back on your feet. You don't know me, Nora said. And there was something genuinely confused in her voice, not offense, but disbelief. I'm a complete stranger. I know you're a mother who would rather sit in the rain than take one wrong step with her kid. Marcus's voice was steady. I know you lost your job for doing the right thing, and I know what it looks like when a person is out of road. He paused. I can't fix everything that happened to you, but I can give you a safe place to sleep tonight. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. Nora put her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook silently for a while. Marcus pushed the box of tissues across the table and gave her the room to do it without an audience. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red and searching. Why? She asked. Why are you doing this? Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked toward the dark hallway where his son was sleeping. 4 years ago he started, and his voice came out slower than he intended. My wife died. Nora's hand moved across the table without thinking. Claire. Pancreatic cancer. By the time we caught it, it had already traveled. The memories had a way of landing with full weight still, no matter how many times he picked them up and set them down. We spent 18 months fighting it. Every treatment there was. We sold things borrowed against the house, ran up debt we had no business running up, because what else do you do? He exhaled slowly. She fought hard. She was the toughest person I've ever known. And he stopped. Let the silence carry what he couldn't say. I'm so sorry, Nora whispered. Owen was 5. He barely understood what was happening. One day Mommy was sick, and then one day she just wasn't there anymore. Marcus's voice went rough at the edges. And I had this mountain of debt and a 5-year-old who needed me, and I stopped functioning, really. I kept moving. I went to work, I picked him up, I fed him, I put him to bed. I did the mechanical parts, but I wasn't not really. Not for 2 years. Nora was very still. Friends stopped calling. My family's back in Virginia. They offered to take Owen for a while, and I couldn't do it. He was all I had left of her. Marcus turned the bowl slowly between his hands. Some days I didn't know how I was going to get through the week. But there was nobody else, so I just kept going. What changed? Nora asked softly. Honestly, Marcus thought about it. Nothing changed. I'm still going through the motions on a lot of days. Still trying to be enough for him. Still figuring out how to be 2 parents in one body. He looked at her. But tonight, seeing you out there holding Lily under that shelter, I saw what we looked like 4 years ago. Drowning and out of options and no one stopping. He shook his head. Nobody stopped for us. I keep thinking the only way to make some kind of sense out of what we went through is to be that person for somebody else. So, he left the word there like a door he was holding open. Fresh tears spilled down Nora's face, but she was half smiling through them, that specific combination of exhaustion and unexpected grace. Thank you, she whispered. Get some sleep, Marcus said quietly. Both of you. Morning came in bright and disorienting. Dad. A voice cut through Marcus's sleep like a fire alarm. "There is a little girl on the futon." He opened one eye. Owen was standing in his doorway in dinosaur pajamas, looking equal parts alarmed and fascinated. "I know, buddy." Marcus sat up, pressing his palms against his eyes. "Come help me make breakfast and I'll explain." Over pancakes, his one reliable specialty, though he'd never tell you they were anything special, Marcus gave his son the age-appropriate version. Owen sat with that serious expression he got, the one that made him look 40 years old, processing every word. "So they don't have a home right now," Owen said. "Not at the moment." And she was just sitting there in the rain, with her little girl. "Yeah." Owen chewed his pancake thoughtfully. Then he said with the calm certainty of someone who had simply looked at the facts and reached the only logical conclusion, "That's like when we didn't have any money after Mommy died and everybody sort of just disappeared." Marcus felt the words land somewhere behind his ribs. Owen rarely brought up those years. He'd been so young. Marcus had never been sure how much he actually remembered. Kind of like that he managed. Owen nodded. "Then we have to help them." He said it the way you'd state the weather. "Because nobody helped us, and it was really hard, and that wasn't fair." Marcus pulled his son into a hug that lasted a little longer than Owen probably thought was necessary, but Owen let it happen anyway, which was its own kind of gift. Nora appeared in the kitchen doorway a few minutes later, Lily on her hip, both of them looking rested but tentative, still wearing the oversized clothes, still carrying that careful awareness of taking up space that doesn't feel like yours yet. "I'm so sorry," Nora started. "Pancakes," Marcus said, gesturing to the table. He slid a plate toward the empty chair. "Fair warning, they're not going to change your life, but they're hot." Owen and Lily regarded each other across the table, with the solemn curiosity of children who are deciding whether to trust each other. Then Lily pointed at the quilt draped over the back of Owen's chair, an old patchwork thing in blues and greens slightly worn at the corners. "That's pretty," she said. Owen looked at it. "My mom made it," he said simply, "before she got sick." Lily touched the edge of it very gently, like she understood without being told. "My bunny got lost," she announced then, with the sudden pivot that only 5-year-olds can pull off. His name was Captain Beans. Owen considered this seriously. "We have a sewing kit," he said. "Dad taught me how to sew buttons. We could probably figure out a bunny." The look Nora gave Marcus over their children's heads was one of those looks that can't really be put into words. The kind that carries everything. Days became a week. A week became 2. Marcus left before 6 most mornings. The roofing crew started at first light, and Tennessee summers didn't forgive you for being slow. Nora got the kids up, made breakfast, walked them the 4 blocks to Owen's school. Marcus had called ahead and arranged temporary enrollment for Lily in the kindergarten program. Owen had not been asked about this beforehand and had responded to the news with a simple, "Obviously she should come to my school." Nora spent her days at the kitchen table with her laptop and her phone making calls, sending applications, slowly rebuilding the thing that had been methodically torn down. She was methodical about it, organized. She kept a yellow legal pad with every clinic she'd contacted and every response or non-response she'd received. Some evenings Marcus would come home to find dinner on the stove and the house full of a noise it hadn't had in 4 years. Owen narrating some elaborate construction project to Lily. Lily issuing corrections at top volume. The television on in the background. The smell of something cooking. He stood in the doorway one Tuesday evening and just stood there, didn't move. Gabe had asked him at work that week how things were going at home. Marcus had said different, and then spent a moment figuring out whether different was good. He decided it was. For the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to coming home. 5 weeks after that rainy Wednesday, Nora came downstairs while Marcus was washing the dinner dishes, a careful kind of light in her face that he hadn't seen before. "I got a call back," she said. He turned off the water. "Yeah, Eastside Rehab and Sports Medicine. Over on Magnolia. They want to meet with me Friday." She was holding herself very still, the way people do when they're afraid to believe something good. "It's a smaller clinic. Not corporate-owned. The woman I spoke with, she said she'd heard about what happened at Summit. She said." Nora stopped, pressed her lips together. "She said she respected the call I made. That's because it was the right call. I know." A small smile broke through. "I know it was. It's been a long time since someone else agreed with me out loud." She got the job on Friday. She came home and she caught herself using that word home and paused on it. She came back that evening with color in her face and sat down at the kitchen table and told him about the salary and the schedule and the colleagues she'd met. And Marcus listened to all of it. And when she finished, he said, "That's great, Nora. I mean that." "It is," she agreed. "I'll have enough saved for first and last month somewhere in about 6 weeks. Maybe 8. A silence settled between them. "Unless," she said, watching him carefully, "you didn't want us to leave." Marcus had been looking at the table. He looked up. "I don't want you to leave." He said it plainly without ceremony, because he'd never been a man who dressed things up. This house was quiet before. Aiden and I, Owen and I, we were just 2 people rattling around in it, going through the motions. It's different now. He paused. "You don't have to leave. I mean, I think you should stay. Pay rent if it makes you feel better. We figure the rest out as we go." Nora looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said quietly. Neither of them said anything else, but something had shifted unmistakably between one breath and the next. Fall rolled in over the Tennessee River in long golden waves. Nora had painted the second bedroom a soft sage green, asked first, apologized twice for asking, and then executed it on a Saturday afternoon, while Lily supervised by pointing at spots she'd missed. The kitchen got reorganized. A small vase of grocery store sunflowers appeared on the windowsill above the sink. Marcus didn't mention it, but he noticed it every single morning. Owen laughed more. That was the thing that hit Marcus hardest in the quiet, unexpected moments. He hadn't realized how long his son had been managing himself, holding himself carefully, quietly, not wanting to be a burden. Lily didn't give Owen that option. She needed him to be loud and present and silly, and Owen rose to it like he'd been waiting for permission. His grades improved. His teacher sent home a note that said he'd been helping other kids during reading time, which Marcus read standing at the mailbox, and had to put back in the envelope and breathe for a second before going inside. Nora's work at Eastside settled her in ways that Marcus could see happening in real time. She came home energized even on hard days. She'd started picking up an extra shift on Thursdays. She talked about her patients with the kind of care that told you exactly who she was, not as a clinician, but as a person. Late evenings after the kids were in bed became theirs without either of them deciding it. They'd end up on the front porch tea or the occasional beer, talking about nothing and everything. Her patients, his projects, Owen's current obsession with birds, Lily's ongoing campaign to get a dog, which Nora was firm about, but Marcus suspected she was losing. It was good. Easy, in a way that Marcus hadn't experienced with another person since Claire. And underneath it was the current. The awareness, the thing neither of them would reach for because the stakes of reaching and missing were simply too high. One night in October, sitting on the porch in the almost dark, their hands both resting on the armrests between their chairs, their fingers about 4 inches apart, Nora moved her hand first, then caught herself, pulled back. Marcus had done the exact same thing a half-second behind her. "We should probably," Nora started. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. Neither of them said what they were actually thinking. What if we ruin this? What if we reach for it and lose everything we built? They sat quietly for a while after that, and the silence was a little heavier than usual, and neither of them pretended otherwise. Lily's 6th birthday fell on a Saturday in October, just over a year after that Wednesday night in the rain. They threw a small party in the backyard. A handful of kids from Lily's kindergarten class, a store-bought cake with a horse on it, because that was the current obsession, and far too many balloons. Lily had spent the morning making Owen a paper crown and declaring him, for reasons she declined to explain, the official birthday lieutenant. Marcus stood at the edge of the yard watching them run. Owen wearing his paper crown without irony, chasing Lily around the old oak tree while she shrieked and laughed and fell down in the grass and popped back up like it had never happened. Nora came to stand beside him. "There's something else," she said. "Yeah." Marcus cleared his throat. "They really are." A long quiet stretched between them. Not the heavy kind, the kind that's full of things waiting to be said. "Marcus," Nora's voice was low. The kids were on the other side of the yard. "I don't want to be just friends anymore." The words landed cleanly, no drama, no theater. Just the truth offered out loud. Marcus turned to look at her, really look at this woman who'd come into his life with nothing, who'd rebuilt herself in his kitchen and his yard, and somehow in the process had rebuilt something in him that he genuinely believed was past rebuilding. "I've been waiting about 11 months to hear you say that," he said. Nora's eyes filled. I was terrified of ruining it. So was I. She laughed a little, and it broke the last of the tension. Marcus reached over and took her hand carefully, deliberately, and she let him and held on. They didn't need to make a production of it. It was just two people finally, after a very long time, choosing. Slow, Nora said. For them. For us. I can do slow, Marcus said. Slow turned out to be more complicated than it sounded. Living together, dating, and trying to keep two kids from noticing required a kind of strategic creativity that neither of them had anticipated. Movie nights became dates only after both children were solidly asleep. Stolen moments in the kitchen while the kids were in the backyard. Holding hands under the dinner table, which they both somehow managed to convince themselves was subtle. It was not subtle. They told the kids officially about 3 months in, sat them down at the kitchen table with what Marcus considered an appropriately serious tone. He started with, "So, Nora and I have something we want to. Are you boyfriend and girlfriend now?" Lily interrupted, with the flat certainty of a woman who has been patiently waiting for the rest of the room to catch up. "We already knew," Owen added, not looking up from his cereal. "We've known for like a really long time, Dad." Marcus looked at Nora. Nora pressed her lips together clearly, trying not to smile. "How long exactly?" Marcus asked. Owen shrugged. "Since the sunflowers." The first year of their relationship had its rough patches because real things always do, and neither of them had any illusions about that. When Nora caught a bad respiratory infection that February and ended up bedridden for 5 days, Marcus went stiff in a way she recognized immediately. He brought her soup. He refilled her water. He did everything right, but he did it all with his jaw set and his eyes somewhere else, his hands slightly tighter on the bowl than they needed to be. "Hey," Nora said on the 3rd day. "Look at me." He looked. "I have a respiratory infection," she said. "I am not Claire." The air went out of him. His whole posture changed. "I know that," he said, but his voice said something different. "You don't have to manage it alone," she said gently. "You don't have to be fine about it. You're scared. That's allowed. But you have to tell me when that happens, because if you go quiet on me, I don't know what I'm dealing with." It was the first of a long series of conversations, uncomfortable, necessary, slowly transformative. Learning to say the frightening things instead of performing competence over them. Learning that being vulnerable with someone wasn't the same as being fragile. Nora had her own patterns to untangle. 2 months into her job, when a billing dispute with a new insurance provider threatened to eat up half a month's paycheck, she started picking up extra shifts without telling Marcus, quietly arranging to cover more ground, more hours, more days. Marcus noticed in about a week. "You haven't had a day off in 12 days, he said one evening. "I'm fine." "Nora, I can't be the person who—" She stopped, started again. "I can't be a situation someone has to manage. I need to carry my own weight. I need to." "You're already carrying your weight," Marcus said, and his voice was firm but not hard. "You've been carrying your weight since day one. I'm not asking you to stop. I'm asking you to not carry it alone just because you're scared of what it means if you lean on someone." He looked at her steadily. "We're partners. That's what partners are for." She sat with that for a while, then slowly. "It's hard for me to trust that it won't be taken away." "I know," Marcus said. "It's hard for me too. We're just going to have to keep practicing." The second year was easier. Not simpler. Life doesn't get simpler, but easier. The sharp edges of the fear had been worn smooth by practice and patience. They fought occasionally and had learned to fight fair. They apologized and meant it. They forgave without scorekeeping. They built traditions. Friday movie nights that always devolved into the kids falling asleep before the third act. Sunday morning pancakes, which were now officially a family event that Owen took extremely seriously, including the requirement that everyone be at the table before the first batch was done. Wednesday evening walks along Volunteer Landing, all four of them sometimes missed Dot when she felt like the company. Owen turned 11. He'd joined the school's junior naturalist club and was now conducting what he called a bird census of the Riverside district, which involved a lot of standing in the backyard at sunrise with binoculars while Lily ate toast beside him and offered commentary on which birds had the best style. Lily turned 7. She'd become, in Nora's private description, a small, benevolent tyrant, which Marcus considered accurate and affectionate. She had Owen absolutely wrapped around her finger, and Owen allowed this with a dignity that Marcus found deeply moving. One evening in late spring, as Marcus and Nora were cleaning up after dinner, Lily was at the kitchen table doing homework with the quilt over her lap. She'd adopted it as her personal reading accessory, and she looked up and said, entirely casually, "When are you guys getting married?" The plate in. Nora's hand wobbled. "We haven't really talked about that yet, sweet, but you love each other," Lily said, with the patient logic of someone explaining something obvious to someone slow. "And we're all already a family. So when do we make it official?" She went back to her homework. Case closed, apparently. That night on the front porch, Marcus brought it up. "She's not wrong," he said. Nora looked at him sideways. The Tennessee River was doing something nice with the last of the light. "No," she agreed. "She's not." "Are you?" He paused. Tried again. "I want to ask you something, but I want to make sure I'm asking you, and not asking the idea of it. So I want to know, are you ready? Not would it be nice, but are you actually ready?" Nora was quiet for a while. The crickets filled the space. "Yes," she said. "I think I've been ready for a while. I just needed to know you were sure. Not cautiously sure. Actually sure." Marcus thought about the woman who'd been standing under that bus shelter in the rain with nothing but a backpack, and her daughter and her refusal to take the wrong exit. He thought about the person she'd become here in this house, in this life they'd assembled from nothing. He thought about the person he'd become too, the version of himself that laughed again, that argued about things that mattered, that sat on this porch and actually meant it when he said he was okay. "I'm sure," he said. "I've never been more sure of anything except Owen." 3 months later, on a warm Saturday in August, while Owen and Lily were constructing what could generously be called a ninja course out of pool noodles and 2 sawhorses, Marcus had been explicitly told he could not use for this purpose. Marcus stood on his back porch and felt the weight in his pocket. He'd been carrying the ring for 8 days. He kept waiting for the perfect moment, and then he watched Lily climb onto a crate, announce herself supreme commander of the obstacle zone, and demand that Owen sign a treaty, and he thought, there is no perfect moment. There's just this specific collection of noise and grass stains and kids, and this woman laughing at them with her hand over her mouth. "Hey, Supreme Commander." Marcus stepped off the porch. "Come here a second." "Owen, you too." They ran over breathless mud on their knees. Marcus crouched down to their level, looked at all 3 of them, his son who had learned how to laugh again, this girl who had turned their quiet house into something alive, and this woman who had shown him that grief wasn't a room you got sealed inside forever, but a door that could be opened when the right person knocked. "We're a pretty good team," he said. "The 4 of us. The best team," Lily confirmed without hesitation. Marcus reached into his pocket, heard Nora's breath catch. "What if we made it official?" He looked at Nora, then held her gaze and let it carry everything he'd never been good at putting into sentences. "Nora Callahan." He opened the ring box. "Will you marry me?" Nora's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled immediately, and she let them, and she didn't look away from him. "Yes," she said, quiet at first. Then, clearly, fully, "Yes." Owen made a sound that could only be described as a victory yell, and launched himself at Marcus. Lily stood for approximately 1 second, processing the situation, then threw herself at Nora, who caught her and held her and was crying and laughing at the same time. Marcus stood up with his son's arms around him and his soon-to-be family in front of him, and for a moment he couldn't say anything, because there was nothing left that words could add. The wedding was 8 months later, on a Saturday in April. They kept it exactly the size they wanted. Close friends, Gabe and his wife, the staff from East Side, who'd become Nora's people, Miss Dot in the front row, looking like she'd been waiting for this since approximately week 2. The ceremony was in the backyard under the old oak tree, with the Tennessee air still cool and the maple at the back fence starting to come in green. Someone had strung lights through the branches. The quilt, Claire's quilt, was draped over a chair at the end of the aisle, not hidden, not explained, just present, part of the story, part of what had made all of this possible. Lily took her role as flower girl with the gravity of a diplomat. Owen was ring bearer. He walked down the aisle and handed over the rings with a formality that made several people in the small crowd press their lips together, trying not to cry. Then Nora appeared, and Marcus forgot every word he'd ever known. She was beautiful. She was also, and this was the thing that hit him deepest whole, not in spite of everything, because of it. She'd carried hard things, and she was still here, still choosing, still walking toward him. When it came time for vows, Marcus's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Nora, You showed me that a house isn't a home, and that going through the motions isn't the same as living. You helped my son laugh again. You helped me feel things I'd told myself I was finished feeling." He paused. Let himself be in it. "You did all of that while rebuilding your own life from scratch, which I want to say out loud because I think you deserve to hear someone say it. I promise to choose you on the good days and the hard ones. I promise to tell you when I'm scared. I promise to be your partner, in the actual sense of the word, not just in the easy parts." His voice thickened. "You're worth choosing, every single day." Nora's tears had started somewhere around the word house, and she made no attempt to stop them. "Marcus, you opened your door to a stranger who had nothing to offer, and you didn't wait to see what you'd get back." She took a breath. "You taught me that asking for help isn't the same as giving up. You taught Owen how to grieve, and how to come back from it. And that's the most extraordinary thing I've ever watched a person do. I promise to be honest with you when it's hard. I promise not to disappear into myself when I'm scared. I promise to be your partner, your equal, your home for every day we have." The officiant barely got through the last line before everyone was clapping. The kiss lasted a second longer than planned. Neither of them minded. That evening, after the small reception, after the lights in the backyard had been turned off one string at a time, after Owen and Lily had both fallen asleep in Owen's room in a pile of stuffed animals and quilt corners, Marcus and Nora sat on the front porch for the 10,000th time. The river made its sound a few blocks away. The neighborhood was quiet. "Do you ever think about that night?" Nora asked. "The rain." "Every day," Marcus said. "I think about how close I came to driving past. How many nights before that I'd driven past everything, people, moments, my own life." He shook his head. 4 years of just being somewhere without actually being there. Nora was quiet for a moment. "I'd stopped sitting in that shelter. Not literally. I mean, I had to get up eventually. But inside." She turned to look at him. "I had run completely out of forward. I couldn't see any next step. And then your headlights came around the corner and you just stopped. Like it was obvious." "It was obvious," Marcus said. "Not everyone sees it that way. Their loss." She laughed soft and real, leaning her head onto his shoulder. He thought about who he'd been that night. Exhausted, sealed up, running on muscle memory. He thought about who he was, now the same, in all the ways that were structural, but different in the ways that matter. More present, more willing. From inside the house through the open window came Owen's voice drifting out of his room, clearly reading to Lily, or possibly making it up as he went, which was more likely. And then the knight and the dragon and the wild horse all decided that the whole quest was better together, so they went home and never had to fight alone again. Lily's voice. "That's not how dragon stories go." Owen's voice. "It is in this one." Nora laughed softly. "He's going to be a writer." "God help us," Marcus said fondly. They sat under the Tennessee stars for a long time after that. Two people who had arrived at each other from opposite directions through opposite varieties of loss and had somehow ended up here on this porch, with these kids in this home they had built from nothing but wreckage and stubbornness, and the specific grace of someone showing up at the exact right moment. You don't plan for that. You can't engineer it. You can only stop when your headlights catch someone standing in the rain and trust that the gut feeling knows something your brain hasn't gotten to yet. Marcus Ellis had stopped that night thinking he was doing something for a stranger. He didn't know he was doing it for himself. 3 years and 4 months later, 4 broken pieces had become one whole family. Not because everything was fixed, because they stopped waiting for things to be fixed before they let themselves live. Their story wasn't about perfect timing. It was about choosing imperfectly every day, about showing up in the rain, about letting someone in when every instinct you have says lock the door, about discovering that sometimes the darkness doesn't end so much as someone arrives with a light and you realize you were holding one too. And maybe that's the whole of it. Maybe that's always been the whole of it. If this story reminded you that it's never too late to begin again, share it with someone who needs that reminder today. Subscribe to Soul Lift Stories for more. Because sometimes the best chapters are still ahead, waiting for the moment you choose to stop to see and to let something good in.